Thank you, everyone. So I see still a few more people joining. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know everybody's on a lot of webinars these days, but again, I really appreciate you being here. It's going to be an exciting webinar. We'll go through an overview of Morpheus, and we'll go through a long demo. And we'll try to keep it as interactive as possible. So please, submit your questions in the Q&A window as we go through this as well. So welcome once again. My name is Hisham Red. I'll introduce myself a little bit more here in just a moment. But today, really the focus on this webinar is around a technical overview of the Morpheus hybrid cloud platform. And what I'd like to do today, since we just released also the 5.0 release, last week we did a webinar on that. And also this morning I did a webinar on that to cover the European base as well. Those are available for replay. But also, I'd like to give you guys a little bit of a view of what the 5.0 release looks like, and we'll touch on that as part of my demonstration today here. So again, thank you for joining. Let's just jump right in. So my name is Hisham Rad. This is me. I'm the Director of Technical Marketing here at Morpheus Data. I've been in the software industry for a very long time with a number of different companies like VMware, Symantec, Novell back in the day. And I was a practitioner prior to that, actually working in the healthcare industry back then. And I'm a frequent presenter at a lot of different events and conferences throughout my time. If you'd like to connect with me or reach out, please do so. You can see my LinkedIn and Twitter handles down on the bottom. Okay, so again, the session today is really focused on providing that, Morpheus technical overview. What is it that we do? What are the problems that we solve? And also give you a detailed demonstration of how we walk through this, right? So we'll go through quickly at an overview of the platform, understanding the common use cases that we address as part of that, right? How different organizations use our product today. So I'll touch on some of that. And then the big portion of this really is focused on walking through a demo and helping you get a good understanding of what it is that we do in the Morpheus platform. Okay, and then lastly, we'll come back and summarize it in there. So I am on my own today. I did actually promote one of my coworkers here to a panelist as well. But please submit your questions in the Q&A window, and we'll try to answer them either real time or even some of them verbally live as well. Now, let's start with this slide here, right? I actually typically refer to the slide as a spaghetti slide, because when you look at organizations today, this is really what their environments look like, right? And it's not that they want it to be this complicated, but to succeed, it almost has to be, right? You have all these different tools and all these different technologies that are a must, right, to continue to innovate and continue to move forward. So you have your on-prem, data center or multiple data centers, and you have the edge, and then you have all these different technologies, and you have all these adjacent technologies, again, that are necessary, right? Continuous integration, identity management, configuration management, logging, monitoring, right? DR solutions. And then you also have to deal with, hey, potentially some applications that require bare metal, virtualized applications that you're starting to think about, hey, I need to modernize these applications and turn them into, containerized applications, leveraging technologies like infrastructure as code, right? And oh yes, not only that, but we now have to do this across our private cloud and in one or more public clouds as well, right? So the complexity just becomes enormous, right? And so what we're finding that this introduces a lot of different silos, if you will, within the organization. One of the things it also introduces, which typically, for most IT folks is, it raises a lot of risk. It presents risk and security concerns that come up, in addition to all the other things around like costing, et cetera, right? But you end up again with silos within these organizations, and there's a lot of manual handoffs that have to happen. And that can be very challenging. I mean, one of the organizations that we deal with today, before they started using Morpheus, it was 8 weeks before they can get an application stood up, because they need to stand up an application. They need to request a VM. They need to request the resources, potentially some storage, folks need to get involved. The networking folks need to get involved. Somebody has to assign a DNS entry and IP, all these different things that have to happen. It was literally a chain reaction that kept on going serially, and it took approximately 8 weeks. Now, they're able to do this in under 20 minutes, right? Because now it's just a matter of, hey, here's your self-service catalog. You can go ahead and actually request this. So again, this is a type of benefits that you can see and our customers today are actually realizing as part of our offering. So cloud costs are out of control. Now, honestly, not only are the costs out of control, but because people are swiping their credit cards to get, things quickly in the public cloud, well, for a lot of organizations, this is actually presenting a much bigger problem. It's introducing a lot more risk, right? So customers or organizations have to be very careful with that too and how they address that. So that's one thing, right? That shadow IT problem that's currently been happening for some time, in a lot of organizations, honestly, it still continues, right? But we can help with that, right? And then, as I mentioned earlier, right, some organizations that have benefited from how they can actually really reduce that service delivery time is really critical, because that's been a challenge for them. And speed and agility is typically one of the most important things that organizations are asking for now. They're just not able to react quick enough to stay innovative and be able to continue to compete within their specific verticals, right? So it's an important aspect that we need to address, is how can we deliver those services a lot more quickly in a cloud-like fashion, even on-prem, right? That's really important. And then we also want to foster a very collaborative experience between the different teams. So bring all those silos and actually really help bring them together. And that's something that we like to pride ourselves on doing. So when you think about Morpheus, Morpheus is a hybrid cloud application provisioning and orchestration platform that can do this across both private and public cloud, as you can see listed here on the red arrow, right? You want to deploy to the edge? Great. You want to deploy in your private cloud? No problem. You want to actually deploy to the public cloud? Excellent. We can help you do that, right? And we can put governance around that, which is really, really important. Now, the other thing is, remember, at the end of the day, it's all about the application, right? The application is not functioning from an end user perspective. They don't care if it's a network outage, a storage outage, whatever the case may be. From their perspective, they can't get to the application. That's a problem, right? That's an outage for them, right? And that's not good. So we want to be able to solve a lot of these problems. So again, and we also want to be able to help you with bare metal provisioning, which there's still a lot of applications, believe it or not, that have bare metal requirements. There's still obviously or by and large, most applications out there are virtual, running on virtual platforms like vSphere and Nutanix, et cetera, right? But then a lot of organizations are really looking to re-platform and rebuild their applications, leveraging modern technologies or modernize their applications with containerized, containers and other type of modern technologies like PaaS and FaaS, et cetera, right? So it's important that whatever hybrid cloud solution can address all those requirements, right? That is really important for us to be able to do. Now, we want to make sure that we can do that in a real, easy, simple way. So in one place that becomes your on-demand self-service orchestration portal, that's where you can do that from. We want to make sure that it's agnostic, right? We are a 100% agnostic solution. All those things that you saw earlier on that spaghetti slide that I mentioned, we're not saying rip and replace any of those. What we're saying is let's bring them all together and help you work a lot more cohesively, a lot more effectively within your organization. So that's what we mean by agnostic. We're not here to lock you in any way. We're really helping you bring all those solutions together, which is the most important thing. And lastly, we respond to change. And what I mean by that is, hey, it doesn't matter, right? You've been virtual, you've been doing bare metal, you've done virtual, you're moving to containers and function and serverless and et cetera, right? We're here to help you, right? We continue to modernize our platform as new technologies become available. And I'll be able to show you that as part of the demonstration here momentarily. So the key to speed and agility is providing an on-demand self-service experience. And I will touch more a little bit on that. I do have some Gartner slides just to kind of, emphasize some of these points that I'm discussing here. Again, speed and agility is all about providing an on-demand self-service experience that will function across private and public clouds. So if you're a cloud administrator, right, or you're an IT practitioner, right, we want to be able to help you with that. If you're part of an ops or DevOps team, so the developers and the ops, we want to continue to foster bringing those two groups together and continue to foster a stronger DevOps culture. So we're able to help the DevOps folks as well. And then we're also able to help those business ops folks, right? And those financial folks that really want to be able to have costing and reporting around that and just visibility overall across their environment. You got to be able to measure your environment in order to manage it, right? So that's really important. So we'll get into that as well. So again, at the heart and soul of this, it all starts with self-service, right? And so, but how do we make that happen? So how do we bring that all together to make that happen for you? Well, one, for those of you who are IT practitioners, IT admins, right, cloud admins, if you will, right, you want to be able to start to bring all this together, but you can't ignore your existing environment, your onboard, your brownfield environment. You need to be able to onboard that. So it's very simple to onboard your environment, manage your existing environment, while still looking forward to things like Kubernetes and infrastructure as code, et cetera, and tie that in. So that's important. The other really important aspect is governance, right? And so it's important to put these guardrails up for all your end users, right? And be able to do this regardless of on-prem, right? Or in the public cloud or whatever cloud it may be, right? You have to put those guardrails up. And the Morpheus role-based access control and policy engine allows you to do that. Also, as I mentioned earlier, right, we want to continue to foster a stronger DevOps culture. A lot more developers want to be able to consume the self-service experience. And you know what? Not only do they want to consume it, but they want to consume it in different ways. They want to consume it programmatically via API or via command line interface, in addition to having the option to doing it through the user interface as well. So that's one of the things that we want to continue to foster. So you can leverage technologies like infrastructure as code. We can tie into your CI/CD application release pipelines, right? So if you have Jenkins or other tools, yeah, we can tie into that and we can integrate, right? And lastly, from that business ops, FinOps perspective, right? Remember, you have to be able to measure your environment to manage it effectively, right? And so we're going to give you visibility, we're going to give you cost visibility, and the ability to do reporting across the environment as well. That's another thing that you can do. Now, when you think about the application lifecycle, right, the application has multiple stages or multiple phases, if you will, right? So somebody has to trigger it, whether it's coming from a GUI, an API, a command line interface, or through an IT service management tool, like maybe a self-service portal or something like that, right? At any point in time, there's different phases, right? So you have to be able to tie into identity management. You have to be able to tie into different, provisioning blueprints and services, right? You're going to connect some network technologies, potentially things like load balancers, right? You're going to be able to do some config management. You want to be able just to do some automation around that. You want to be able to do day 2 operations now that you own this workload. So you want to be able to manage the application through its continuous life cycle. And so this is really what Morpheus does. And by doing so, again, think back to that spaghetti slide where we bring all this together. Okay, we bring all this together for you by integrating into this, myriad of applications and technology solutions that are out there in the industry today that pretty much every organization leverages, right? So any of you, if you just look at the slide, you probably leverage, many of these solutions, if not all of these solutions that are on this slide, right? So excellent. Again, remember, we bring it all together to the Morpheus platform. Now, again, we cannot really neglect Kubernetes, right? And modern application platforms, right? A lot of organizations are really starting to build and provide production Kubernetes workloads today. Okay, a lot of folks are doing that. Now, one of the things that we want to do is we want to help you simplify that, right? And what I mean by that is, you know what? You can leverage the Morpheus platform to deploy an Azure Kubernetes service or an Elastic Kubernetes services on AWS, right? Or onboard brownfield Kubernetes clusters and be able to manage and deploy to them from the Morpheus platform. Or leverage our Kubernetes service, which is called the MKS, Morpheus Kubernetes Service, which allows you to also deploy on-prem or in the public cloud, anywhere you like, and be able to manage and utilize that and deploy to it, which I will show you as we get into the demonstration. So when you look at all these organizations, right, there's the traditional apps that they have, right? And then they're also looking at all these new technologies and they're saying, okay, do I simply rehost my applications? Do I make some modifications, some limited modernization and just re-platform them, maybe taking some components, putting it up in the cloud, you know, being able to move things around, get a little bit of better performance? Or do I say, you know what, that application, it's just a matter of refactoring it completely, rebuilding it from the ground up and just leveraging these modern technologies, right? So different organizations are at different stages here, right? Depending on where they are, what applications they have within the environment. The point here is that it doesn't matter where you are in that journey, right? We are able to help you with existing applications and as you continue to modernize your applications. And remember, I mentioned earlier, we are all about fostering a stronger DevOps culture and bringing, you know, that group together and providing more for that group. Now, having said that, right, when you think about Morpheus, and we will touch a little bit more about this as I get into the demo, right? In reality, you can actually deploy this in less than an hour. And actually, if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see there's a video of me deploying this and actually provisioning to the public cloud in under an hour. That's how simple it is to actually stand Morpheus up. Now, in a production environment, obviously, you're not going to do it in less than an hour. You want to think more methodically. I did a single node implementation, right? But if you're going to deploy this in a larger organization where you have a lot more, you know, endpoints that you want to manage, right? You're going to actually do this methodically. You want to go through our reference architecture. You want to determine the best deployment model for you. Hey, are you going to do a single node? Are you going to do an HA cluster? Are you going to do a distributed tier implementation, right? With X amount of nodes within your environment, right? Are you going to deploy on-prem or are you going to deploy it in the public cloud? So there's a lot of things that you need to think about. But in reality, if you want to test this out, which I'll show you how you can do that at the end, you can actually get this up and running literally in an hour and be deploying workloads because of our integrated self-service catalog as well. Okay. And again, as I mentioned earlier, right? No fear of lock-in here. Again, we want to bring all those tools and all those solutions together. And you can see that here as part of the graphic on the left, right? And it becomes really your secure system of record while, and having said that though, right? Because I get customers say, hey, you know what? We got ServiceNow. Great. We have native ServiceNow integration, right? Where you can integrate CMDB, incident management, approvals, as well as service catalog. So you can take these service catalog items from Morpheus, present them inside ServiceNow for your consumers to provision right from there, from ServiceNow, right? So we have the ability to do that as well. So I don't want you to worry. We got you covered. Now, what does Gartner have to say? Right. So, you know, a lot of, you know, folks listen to, you know, organizations or you know, analysts like Gartner and IDC and others. And I just figured I'd kind of, you know, show you or touch on a few examples here. Remember, I touched on speed and agility, right? At the end of the day, if you can't provide a self-service experience that's going to help you speed up your environment and become a more agile cloud, right? you can't be innovative and continue to be competitive within the marketplace. So this is what Gartner says, that 61% of the leaders that they talk to see this as a really important aspect for them, speed and agility. Obviously, security goes along with that too, right? And having that governance platform that I mentioned as well, and putting those guardrails up. Now, also what Gartner says is, hey, 70% of mid-size and large organizations are going to be adopting a multi-cloud strategy by 2021. I already think it's here, because every organization I talk to, every prospect, every customer, they're already leveraging multiple clouds, right? They have their on-prem private cloud, right? They're leveraging one or more public clouds. So this is, in fact, in my opinion, here today. So they have to have that multi-cloud strategy to be successful, right? And then again, by 2023, Gartner says that 90% of enterprises, they're going to fail, right, to scale their DevOps initiatives if they don't implement a self-service cloud management platform, right? So this is, again, what Gartner says. Again, why? It's because that speed and agility is what's going to help organizations stay ahead of the curve, stay innovative, and be able to continue to be competitive in their verticals. Okay, so that's a really important aspect to think about. And lastly, in 2 years from now, right, 90% of global 5,000 organizations will have production modern applications running, leveraging containers, right, and Kubernetes platforms, et cetera. As a matter of fact, I almost think that it's even closer than that. It's going to happen quicker than that, because a lot of larger organizations I already talked to today have really kind of, started to adopt heavily Kubernetes platforms, whether it's in, on-prem or in the public cloud, and they're really starting to modernize their applications because of the benefits that come along with that as well. Now, having said that, I just thought I'd put this up. Morpheus has been a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant 2 years in a row since the study has been going on. And Gartner really has some stringent requirements that they really look at. So there's really 8 functional areas, and each of those functional areas is a number of other areas that they look at in each of those areas to come up with their scoring, right? And so if you take a look here, you can see where Morpheus data is at. For those of you who have followed this, like for the first year, so back in the 2019, there's a number of vendors that completely dropped off of this list, right? They just said, you know what, we're not gonna even submit a response to Gartner. So, they dropped off this list. But you can see where Morpheus is, right? And we're slightly higher than Flexera when it comes to execution. Right now, Gartner says that they're, slightly ahead of us in terms of vision, right? Again, based on this study from 2020, or just released in early 2020. Now, here's another analyst, if you will. Again, what they say is that 97% are using both private and public cloud. Yes, they are, right? As I mentioned earlier, most organizations are in fact doing that, right? 71% of enterprises are saying that they must have a cross-cloud control plane to help them with the struggles that they have with managing, hybrid and multi-cloud. Sure, that makes sense, right? Again, you need that to stay competitive within the marketplace. And then approximately 70% of organizations saying that they're overspending on cloud, right? I mean, that really is not a surprise. And especially when you just have, shadow IT developers going out, swiping credit cards and need stuff quick, right? There's a lot of overspend, but partially because there's lack of visibility and lack of control, right? Remember what I said earlier. If you can't measure it, how can you manage it, right? So being able to have cost visibility across clouds is an important aspect for every organization, right? So it's really important. Okay, now let's jump into the demonstration here, but I just wanted to kind of highlight a few organizations. You can see, these are, large organizations and multiple verticals, right, that are taking advantage and leveraging the benefits that Morpheus can help them with within their organizations, right? So these are the type of organizations, and these are the ones that we're able to share, because obviously, like any software vendor, right, when you do have, customers, often some of them, are not willing to share their names or have you leverage their names as a reference. So these are some of the ones that we're able to share as a result. Now let's get to the cool and fun stuff. And remember, I am going to give you a quick overview also of some of the cool new things in the 5.0 release, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So let me just stop my sharing here, and I'll reshare. Where is it? Here we go. All right. So actually, let me just maximize my screen so you guys get to see this a little better. Excellent. Let me, if you guys don't mind, I'll just take a quick sip of water here and we'll get started. Okay, so when you first log into the Morpheus platform, you end up actually landing right here at the dashboard. So the operations dashboard. And this kind of gives you a quick view. So as an administrator, it gives you a quick view of what's going on in your environment. How many instances do I have, right, provisioned under management by Morpheus? How many incidents do I have that are open? So yes, when you actually deploy applications, we will automatically create checks and we'll start to monitor them. And then when we start to see failures and we start to see performance degradation, we will actually open incidents for you. But don't worry, if you have ITSM, we can help you open the incidents in there too, so we can integrate into ITSM solutions. Logging. We can do logging for you out of the box, right? So if you're not invested in some of those other logging solutions, we can do that for you out of the box for your environment. But also, if you want to tie into things like Splunk and others, you have the ability to do so. We can tie into backup technologies, which we'll touch more in more detail on in a few moments as well. But I can see here, I have 5 successful backups. I can see my instances that I own. I can go in and filter and change to look at all of them if I want to. I can look at all the recent activity. Everything is audited here. And again, Morpheus really just installs on a Linux platform. So you can go ahead and install a Linux distro of your liking, right? RHEL, SLES, CentOS, Debian, Ubuntu, any of of those that have supported versions that we have, and you simply install the Morpheus bits, and you can run this on-prem, you can run it in the public cloud. As a matter of fact, we have a lot of MSP organizations that run it in the public cloud and leverage our multi-tenancy capability to provide and serve their customers as well in a completely white-labeled, customer-branded instantiation of what you're seeing here. Right? So, and I'll give you an example of that here momentarily. Okay, so great. But remember, I said, the heart and soul of what we do is provisioning. Let's touch on provisioning, and I'll show you what that experience looks like. And I'll also highlight what that looks like in 5.0, as well as what that looks like even from a tenant, right? So I'll go to provisioning instances here. And so I can see, again, all the instances in my environment. I can, have a quick, instant count. They've been going up, running, stopped, right? I can see the resources utilized by this. I'll click on Add. That presents me with the self-service catalog. Out of the box, we have 50 plus different resources here that we provide. And you can actually take these, customize them, and tailor them also for your own requirements. But also, you have the ability to add your own additional self-service catalog items to this list as well. Now, and then very quickly, we give you indication, hey, this can be deployed as a VM. This can be deployed also as a container. So one instance here I can deploy leveraging different technologies. If I scroll down, look at this, CentOS. I can also deploy this to a bare metal. So I can actually take a bare metal blade and deploy this to as well. Right, so I have the ability to do that. So let me just show you what that experience looks like. I'll click on ActiveMQ. I'm deploying to my demo group. In my demo group, I have a number of different clouds. So I get to choose where I want this, AWS or Azure or GCP, or I don't want it on-prem. You know what? I have one deployed on-prem. Let me deploy that one to AWS just to show you guys that. I'll click on Next. And by the way, I can deploy it as a container, as I mentioned, or even as a in this case, a VM or an EC2 instance, right? So I get to choose what I want to deploy here. Yeah, maybe I just want it as an EC2 instance. And you notice right here, I get to see the t-shirt sizes. And as I modify even the t-shirt sizes, right, what's happening is it's actually automatically adjusting the price for me here. So I'm actually seeing the actual cost. And because my administrator is allowing me to deploy to multiple clouds, again, that's just an entitlement thing. You can limit that, or you can make that as broad as you like, right? And I can see what the cost is on all those different clouds. So I can make intelligent decisions around pricing as well. So there's a few mandatory fields here that, you know what, I can go ahead and actually select. Let me do this. Here we go, right? It requires an admin username and password, but as an administrator, you can also lock that in, if you will. There's some additional advanced capabilities here, scaling, etc., right, that you may want to do. You have the ability to do that. Sorry, I forgot to select that. Here we go. So then I can actually run workflows. Workflows can be things like configuration management. It can be an Ansible playbook. It could be a chef recipe, right? A Puppet manifest, even Salt Stack. It could be my own workflow that I've created, right? That could be like even a Virulence Orchestrator workflow, anything that you want here. Really, when you think about our automation engine, the possibilities are endless because of all the different task types that we allow you to create. And yes, you can take advantage of source control as well to integrate, you know, as you're creating all those different task types, right? So this is really cool stuff here that I can do. And I can integrate into backup technologies, right? So on Amazon, for example, it's snapshots, right? That we can integrate with. But if you're on-prem, if you had like Rubrik or Veeam or Commvault, you know, et cetera, you have those on-prem, you're integrated, we can tie those in and they become part of your backup solution as well. And then lastly, lifecycle management. Hey, do I want to be able to provide a power schedule? Maybe I want to power it down at night. You know what I mean? I want to do something like that. Or maybe I want to shut it down. In this case, my administrator has locked me in here. It's going to shut down after 1 day and expire after 2. But that's because I'm in the demo group, right? If I'm in my production group, I don't have that stringent a policy. I'll just click on next here. And we'll go ahead, we can see the summary, and we'll click on complete. Excellent. Very simple experience, right? And I'll click on HM. And by the way, you can do this at the command line. You can do this via API, right? And we're not locking you in here to the GUI, right? But here it is. You can see that this guy is going ahead. It's going through and provisioning. In less than 2 minutes, it's going to be complete. It's going to be ready to go. Now, I actually just provisioned one shortly before this, an ActiveMQ instance here, just to kind of give you guys an idea. You saw the summary, it's powered on, it's healthy, there's no issues, right? 100% availability, you can see the resources it's using. I can go down and get more information like that. Hey, storage, you know, CPU usage, what that looks like, et cetera, but also look at this. Remember I said we log by default? So I can see all the logs that are happening on there. I can actually integrate into a backup solution, right? And I can even snapshot it or actually integrate into backups. I can look at historically what's happened on this guy, right? You know, when I actually provisioned it, how long it took, what else happened? Did I deploy any software on it? Was there any workflows that were run on it? You're able to see that. And also being able to get to the console, right? So if I go in here and just hit enter a couple of times, you'll be able to see that there's a console. And as the owner of this application, I have a ton of day 2 actions. Remember, I want to manage the entire life cycle. Maybe, you know what, 6 months from now or 2 months from now, I realize there is not enough memory here. I need to add some more memory. I can come in and perform a reconfigure on this thing, right? And actually add more memory, add more CPU, add more storage, be able to continuously manage the life cycle of this application. Great, right? So that was like, you know, a service we just showed. But what about something like more complex applications, right? So let me show you here, for example, right? So here is one that I've deployed earlier, right? And also here's another one which has 4 VMs as part of that. If I click on that, you can see here, I chose this one on purpose actually, because I wanted to show you that, you know, even looking at this, you can see that my Tomcat tier or my Tomcat layer is running on AWS. My SQL database is actually running in Azure. right? And this is a functioning application. So I'm going to click on one of these here. You can see this is a content management system application. It's live, running out there in the public cloud right now as we speak, right? So I'm able to, to show you that. So this is a type of thing that you can get into, right? How do you make that happen? You make that happen through our blueprinting engine. But look at this. I can see a Terraform blueprint. I can see Azure ARM templates here. Scrolling down, I can see CloudFormation templates, right? So not only when I actually create a blueprint, I can do a Morpheus blueprint, but I can also leverage all these modern technologies and infrastructure as code, right? So yes, you can essentially grant Terraform access here using the Morpheus governance, right? And RBAC capabilities and policies. Similarly for ARM, right? I don't need to have access to Azure. I don't need to have access to AWS or my Kubernetes clusters. You're going to basically entitle me to these self-service catalog items and different technologies, and you're going to wrap that around with RBAC and policies, and you're going to empower me to be able to deploy without even having access to those clouds or where they're landing, or even the configuration, because you're going to configure all this for me, right, as an administrator. How would you configure something like that from a Morpheus perspective? Let me show you how simple it is. Here's my HM app, right? I want an app tier. Great. You know what? I want a web tier as well. Awesome. In my app tier, you know what? I'd like to add maybe, I'll say Tomcat. There we go. Add the Tomcat, right? And I'll go to my Tomcat tier, and then I'll say, you know what? This is going to be part of my production group because this is going to be a production implementation. I want this, my production, you know what, my production today, I want it to go on my VMware environment. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and then I'll just add a config. But you know what, maybe I want to make this blueprint a multi-cloud blueprint. So let me add the same thing again, but this time I'm going to actually have it say AWS. So now you see here that same Tomcat layer. So when somebody is deploying this blueprint, they're going to be able to deploy it to VMware, and they're going to be able to deploy it to AWS. And I would do the same thing for web. And then that way, when I go to deploy, I get to choose, right? But if you don't want them to choose, you want to start to get, locking them in. Let's say, for example, hey, naming policy in place, that's locked in. You can't change that, right? I want to type in a description of something or other, and I want to lock that in. I want to lock in what version, what layout. I want to force you to provision this as a container. Boom, I'm locking you into that. And you know what? You can't actually request more than 3 gig of storage. I'm locking you in. So all that does is it makes it really simple for somebody requesting it that, hey, one, they're limited in what they can do, and then it becomes a matter of next, provision, done, right? And then you still have the ability to tie in all those things I was touching about earlier, advanced options, being able to, run workflows, provisioning workflows, being able to deploy pieces of code, right? Being able to integrate load balancers, being able to scale, being able to tie in backups and lifecycle management. So you get to do all that. And also, for those of you who really like infrastructure as code, what I just showed you in the UI, it's actually just building all this for me in the background. So as I was clicking and adding and, just doing all that stuff, visually in the designer, it's building this all out for me. And yes, I can export it. So once I create these and I want to share them with a friend or take them from a dev instance to a production instance and implement them there, I can export them and bring them into those environments as well. So incredibly powerful things that you can do as part of this blueprinting engine. So not only will we help you do Morpheus blueprints, you saw all those other technologies as well. Now, since I touched on that, right, remember I wanted to kind of give you guys a quick high level of the 5.0 release, right? So let me just, close that. That was the ActiveMQ instance I showed you guys. So let me log in here into my 5.0 instance, just to kind of give you a quick look and feel for some of the new things that we've implemented. A lot of customers said, hey guys, we really want to provide a more simple shopping cart-like experience, right? Can you help us do that? And, sometimes you just want to lock in, people. You may have some less technical folks that you just want to make it really simple for them. They don't need to choose a t-shirt size or, where is that going to go? What network is that going to go on? They don't need all that, stuff. You can create it in a blueprint, lock it in, or you can also, if you want to make it even simpler, give them this service catalog persona and assign that to them. So you can see in this instance, I'm actually assigned this service catalog persona. I can see the catalog items. I can see here the favorites, right? I can see the ones that I've recently ordered, and I can see what I currently own and have deployed, right? So how do I do this? So here it is. I don't have, an active MQ instance provisioned here. I'll just click on order, and you can see here that I got nothing to enter here. It says everything is locked in by my administrator in the back. So it's very simple for me to do, even including the naming policy. I just select it. I say I'm going to add it to a cart. I can continue shopping out of the service catalog here and add more, things to my shopping cart. Once I'm done, I'll go ahead here. I'll say I want to review this. And when I go ahead and review it, I still have the ability to make any modifications here or delete it if I made a mistake or something like that. I can see how much it's going to cost me per month, and I'm going to say place the order. And that's it. And now if I switch over to my inventory, I'm going to see that it's actually now part of my inventory when it wasn't before. And if I click on view details, you'll also see the blue rocket indicating that it's provisioning. Okay. Now, once again, I had no idea where this thing was going, but now having the details, I can see that it went to my vCenter, right? So it ended up landing, on my on-prem environment on my VMware vCenter server, right? So I can see that, right? I can actually now see how many cores, how much memory, et cetera, right, is assigned to it. And as this thing completes, right, I still have all the day two actions. I still have the ability to be able to do some troubleshooting and see what's going on here within this environment. Incredibly powerful, right? So this is really, really cool stuff. Now, let me just exit that persona really quickly. Since I'm here on 5.0, I just want to kind of highlight a couple of things, right? So we have added new reports. So the reporting section in the 5.0 release is pretty much brand new. When I flash this in 4, you'll see that it's slightly different now, but a bunch of new reports. So we've added 8 reports. You can see how many have run. You can see how many are currently scheduled. I can come in, select these reports, run them now. I can schedule them, right? I can look at the ones that I have scheduled, to run, and I can go ahead and take a look at, my report results and look at what those look like, for example, within my organization as well. So here I can see this one is just a cloud costing report. I can see my different clouds that I have in this environment, and I can look at, the costing. And yes, you always have the ability to export this data because some, folks want to be able to massage this and look at it in different ways. So you can export it and look around at that as well, right? So that's one of the things that we've added. The other thing that is new in the 5.0 is we made some costing enhancements. So if I switch over to costing, now this here is a much smaller environment that we're looking at, but I can see now the budgeting. So budgeting has been there for a while. So it's just kind of moved under this new menu option here. But the new one here is really invoicing, right? So invoicing essentially allows me to now actually see all the invoices from my different environments. So I can see all my different clouds. You can see there's pages and pages here that we collect all this data, right, based on invoicing data that is updated on a daily basis. So we're actually collecting all that and actually seeing all that information. So here I can see all that information here right at my fingertips, right? And then I can actually start to drill down into these and actually look at the cost. Actually, there's nothing going on that one. What's going on here? So maybe do this. Let me take a look. Okay, so there's something going on in this specific instance here, but I can see the nodes. For some reason, I'm not reporting the cost here, but you can see the invoicing and you can jump in and take a look at all of that for you as well. So these are just a number of some of the new cool things that we've just introduced in the Morpheus 5 platform, which you can also download from the morpheushub.com and actually give it, get to try it. Now, let me go back over here where I'll be able to show you some more things I wanted to show. Now, remember I touched on, role-based access control and putting those guardrails up and the policy engine that we have. Morpheus is a multi-tenanted solution. I just want to flash this up very quickly. Here you can see I have multiple tenants. It's literally as easy as clicking create tenant and basically going in, providing the base role for that tenant, the currency for that tenant as well. Yes, because of the costing capabilities that we do, you get to choose that. And then you get to tie in the identity management, right? Hey, Pied Piper, they have their own AD environment or their own SAML, right? And we want to be able to tie into that. Great, right? But what does that experience look like? So let me actually, as an administrator here, I have the ability to impersonate them. So I'm going to impersonate, and you can see here, from their perspective, they would just log into a specific URL, and it would authenticate against whatever identity management solution we have in them. But in this case, Dinesh is limited to the different menu options. You see a lot less menu options that he has, right? He's still able to go in and provision. You can see also the branding. It doesn't even look like Morpheus, right? There's nothing here that says Morpheus. It's just, Pied Piper, their colors, their logo, etc. But you know what? He has access to a specific service catalog. And you can see here, I'm not really able to scroll because you know what? His administrator, Richard, has really locked him in to only these 6 things. I only have 6 items here to deploy. And if you look also even at the blueprint menu or the applications menu, right, he's also limited as well. There's only 3 applications that he can deploy. So again, that all happens through the governance. Taking away all these capabilities and these menu options, these all happen through the governance RBAC capabilities, as well as you get to lock things in further, leveraging the policy engine, okay? Now, if we take a step back, right? So how did we make this happen, right? So you saw when I went to provision, there was like a long list of clouds there. Well, how did you bring all that together? How did you integrate into backup technologies? How did you integrate into logging technologies? How did all that happen? And as an administrator, that all happens here in the infrastructure menu. So let me go ahead. So you're going to go in and create these groups. And these groups, think of them as business groups, right? So I'm going to show you, production, dev test, ServiceNow group, Ansible group, etc. You get to name your groups. I want to show you the demo group because it has the largest number of clouds and it has a 24-hour expiry. That's why that one was expiring in 24 hours earlier. But when I go to that, right, so you're actually going to tie in clouds, right? So I just wanted to show you here because I wanted to show you the list of clouds that I currently have tied in as part of this. But remember, we have the largest list of public and private cloud technologies that you can integrate into Morpheus. So here are all the different cloud endpoints that you can tie in. So you can see, hey, whatever public cloud you want to use, even regardless of where you are in the world, right? You can tie into those clouds. Private clouds, you can see all these different on-prem technologies, right? Hardware vendors here that you can tie into. In addition to all these, virtualization platforms that you can tie into. And we like to pride ourselves that these are very simple to actually integrate with. The most common one on-prem, for example, is VMware. I'll click on add, right? And you can see here that, I just give it a name, and then I come in and provide the URL, provide the credentials, and then I start to carve it up. So I can create multiple accounts under, from one vCenter and really start to carve it up by virtual data center, by cluster, by pool, etc. I can say, discover the brownfield environments for me, right? And once I have things like backup and replication and all that stuff, here integrated. Hey, I want to tie in Avamar here. I want to tie in Zerto over here. Yes, I want you to give me right sizing information. So turn that on. You know what? I want to tie into our Infoblox environment. So let me tie that in. You know what? We leverage, Ansible Tower or just, free open source Ansible here. Tie that in also because I want to be able to run those workflows. I want to be able to populate my ServiceNow CMDB as well. So let me tie in to that instance of ServiceNow. That's how easy it is to tie these in, right? There's no coding. There's nothing super magical about this. Really simple experience in terms of tying this in, right? And not only that, right? But that also not only applies to like things like cloud, but let's say even networks, right? Hey, you know what? You're on-prem, you're running VMware, and you're leveraging NSXV or NSXT or maybe other network technologies that you want to be able to consume and integrate and leverage as part of this. Well, great. You can do that right here. You know what I mean? It's very simple to do. Now, while I'm in here and looking at clouds, for example, just really quickly, remember I said earlier, if you can't measure it, how can you manage it? Just to kind of highlight a cloud here. Here's my AWS cloud. You can see my cost this month so far. I can see my projected cost for the end of the month. I can see the resource usage that I have out there today. And if I scroll down, I have additional information. Hey, how many EC2 instances? How many container hosts in my environment, right? And as I scroll down, I can see that I have a budget policy, a budget plan in place, and you can see what my budget is. I can see how I'm actually doing against that budget, where I'm at. And actually, if I get really close to that, you can have a budget policy that stops you from provisioning to these clouds as well. But looking further down, you get a service breakdown, and you get also recommendations, right? So, hey, look at this. You can see here you have these EC2 T2 nanos. Your minimum is 36, your maximum is 500. Maybe I would recommend maybe reserving 366. If you do that, you're going to save almost $500 on a monthly basis, right? So we give you this type of cost savings opportunities, and not only for this cloud, other clouds as well, including on-prem, right? Where we'll touch on that a little bit later. Now, the other thing I want to touch on while I'm here is this aspect here of clustering. So remember when I was provisioning, I said, hey, you can provision to multiple clouds, but you can also provision different application layouts, meaning it can be a container, it can be a VM, right? It can be bare metal, right? So think about clusters here as being able to onboard Kubernetes clusters. So right from our UI, you can actually stand up Azure Kubernetes clusters in Azure. I can stand up Kubernetes clusters in AWS. I can onboard brownfield Kubernetes into my environment. I can actually stand up what we call Morpheus Kubernetes services, which is basically you leveraging our Kubernetes implementation and being able to, and it doesn't matter. You can deploy that on-prem, Nutanix, VMware. You can deploy it in the public cloud, Azure, AWS, EKS, GKE, on anywhere you want. You get to deploy it right from here and then be able to take advantage of that. So again, once you do this, remember going back to your provisioning, to your instances and your apps, those deployments can be Kubernetes deployments. They can be Terraform deployments that are deploying, to different, infrastructure and apps, right? So you have all that flexibility now because you have this integrated as part of this. Now, we already touched on backup integrations, but you can see here the backups. I just wanted to highlight some of the integrations because, again, we have like 90 plus different integrations, and we continue to add more with like every release, and we continue to enhance our integration. So you can see all the different backup technologies. If I go to logging as well, right, and monitoring, so these are areas where we can actually integrate more solutions with. So if I go to monitoring here, you can see I can integrate with App Dynamics, ServiceNow, New Relic. I can do that, right? If I go to logging as well, I can integrate with things like Splunk and Logarithm, right? So you have the ability to continue to add. And even here, under administration, there's an integration section. And this shows you everything you have integrated, right? Including your clouds. but also additional things that you can integrate into. Automation, configuration management, right? Including Visualize Orchestrator, which a lot of organizations use, right? Different DNS technologies, you know, CI/CD technologies, source control technologies, right? IT service management, trust technologies, a ton of capabilities in terms of integration that you have the ability to do here as well. Now, one thing I'd like to jump back to is the dashboard, because I'd like to cover a few things. Remember, I already showed you reports, and I already showed you sort of the new look and feel of reports, right? The great thing about reports, you can create them, you can run them, you can export them, you have all that information at your fingertips. I like to show analytics because analytics is really reports, but instead of looking at it in a tabular format, you're looking at it in a more of a nice, cool, graphical way where you can pivot on that data any which way you like, right? So here I can come in, look at that data, pivot on that data any which way I like. And I see here that I'm running up against the clock. So I just want to kind of wrap up here very quickly and just take any last minute Q&A. But again, you get to go in, look at this, slice it and dice it, if you will, is what I like to say, and look at it any which way you want, right? In addition to that, we provide guidance, right? So that guidance capability allows you to do right sizing. So right sizing, but to also help you save, right? We're doing cost analytics here as well, cost visibility, you saw some of that. And then we're able to help you. Hey, this guy, you can reduce the memory on this guy, save some money. This guy here, you know, go ahead and shut it down, right? It's really not being used very much. If I click on information here, yeah, look at that, 0% utilization for compute and network. Why am I wasting? That's just a waste of resources, right? So let me go ahead and actually execute that change right here, right? So being able to recover resources as well as part of this. And you can see that this is happening across different clouds, right? Not just one cloud. It doesn't matter. It could be on-prem, right? It could be, you know, also here, on-prem, this public cloud, right? So we can do that across the different clouds that you have integrated as part of this also. So I know I'm up against the clock. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch back to my slide on next steps. And if there are any questions, I can even take some of those, you know, questions live as well. Let me just open up that deck really quickly. So hopefully you guys can see this. So I just wanted to give you a quick next step. If there are any Q&A, please put them in. I will answer them, I promise you. But I just wanted to say, hey guys, honestly, I just showed you like a fraction of what we can do in the Morpheus platform, right? So, but you know, there's nothing stopping you from going out and actually deploying this in a single node implementation and giving it a try yourself. So please, morpheusdata.com/community welcome, or go directly to morpheushub.com, register there, and you're able to download our 4.x release as well as our 5.0 release, and you can give this a try. If you also would like to get a more detailed demonstration of this platform and have a more, you know, intimate setting where we can, you know, have a more interactive type exchange, morpheusdata.com/demo, sign up there and we'd be happy to spend more time with you. And we have a ton of resources. We have a YouTube channel with a number of videos. We have our documentation site. We have a Reddit channel, right? We have our support site, a lot of great resources to help you. But we are here for you. Our partner community is here for you as well to help you get started with Morpheus. So I don't see any additional questions coming in the Q&A. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know it's a difficult time globally everywhere today. So, but thank you. I hope you and your families and your friends are all staying safe and staying healthy. And God bless you all. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. So thank you again and have a wonderful day.